So as we move through, the first question I want to ask you guys, and you tell me, would you rather? I want you to hold up a number one, hold up one finger or two fingers, if you choose which of these options so that I can see. So that means you either have to hold up your finger, one or two, or you have to type your response in the chat feature for me. So would you rather have $1 million today or have 1 penny doubled every day for 30 days? Show me your response. Number one or number two? All right, I see a two.
Two, because I can't, can you see me?
Okay, I don't, but thank you for that response. Okay, I see a one.
I see a one.
Okay, so a one and the two. Okay, so I'm getting some mixed responses there. All right, so I'm going to share with you why having $1 million today may not be in your best interest. Okay, so let's look at it. If I'm Lynn Dimmons, and I help you to make your money, keep your money, and grow your money so you can do the things that you're called to do, and that's build generational wealth and leave an inheritance for your children's children. And for those of you who chose number two, kudos to you. Because if you took $1 million today, it's going to take many more years. It will take essentially 7 years at 8% for that 1 million to double to just 2 million. Okay, so you got to have 7 years to at least get to 2 million with 8% interest growth. But if you get 1 penny doubled every day, everything's all slow. Day 10, we're only at $5.12. Day 20, we were at $5,242. But look what starts happening around day 27, day 28, day 29, we're now over 2.6 million. And by day 30, we're at $5.3 million. So what does this share with us? Guys, essentially, slow and steady wins the race, yes. And we have to be methodical and as far as the way that we implement as far as our finances are concerned. You may say, yeah, I could take that $1 million today and do a lot of things with it. But if you wait just 30 days, that's 5 million. So that's a difference in what you'll be able to do. What's the potential impact? Okay. And that's why I wanted to share with you today some of the things that we'll be talking about, how to maximize your money opportunities. Okay. So in maximizing your money opportunities, so you can feed your family financially and feeding them, physically, we're going to be talking about some things here. First, we're going to be talking about the foundations. What do you do now? Because without a solid foundation, you're not able to move to your next. We're going to scaffold upon that. So once you have a foundation, much like in building a house, they build a foundation first, right? They dig down into the ground, pour the concrete, build that solid foundation. Then you start to see the structural walls start to go up. So we're going to scaffold from that point, what to do later. And then finally, someone moves in. What's the implementation part of your finances? The most important investment that you can do is to invest in yourself. So how do we now take this information and move to maximize on our money opportunities? As I shared, I'm Lynn Dimmons. That's Dimmons, no demons here, y'all. D-E-M-M-O-N-S. And just like many of you, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I educate, I'm an author, I'm a speaker, but I help people make their money, keep their money, and grow their money so they can do what they're called to do, okay? These are different ways you can contact me, but I'm gonna go ahead and get to the reason that you're here today, all right? In laying the foundations of finances, when we talk about foundations, I wanted to drive home this point. Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. And I want you to let that marinate for a little bit, reflect on that, because oftentimes as we start talking about our money, we get that wealth conversation intertwined and things get a little jumbled up, if you will, in our minds. So it's not in having great possessions, even though that's a part of it, but it's in having few wants. Are your wants, needs, and desires met, right? Are they
Yes.
met? And I also want to share that I host a podcast called Financial Confidence with WYTV7, where I share the tools that you need to be able to ensure that you're doing this with Matthew 6:33 in mind. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. So that part lies in having the few wants, because God definitely meets all of our needs. But we're talking about those foundations of finances. And what I want you to do is picture yourself in your favorite grocery store. And think about the way that you actually shop. Are you the methodical person who makes a list and you only purchase what's on that list? Or are you the shopper who goes up and down every single aisle and decides then what it is that you want to choose?
I'm number 2.
The reason that I'm asking you to think about it, right? Because your money blueprint for how you spend, how you save, and how you invest is also relevant in the way that you shop, okay? So if you think about it from that perspective, there are individuals who will go, they get a list, they do couponing, they do all of those things. Couponers are savers, right? They're methodical, they have a plan. The same thing needs to happen in your money. How are you budgeting out what you're spending? Do you have money set aside? Are you paying yourself first? It's not just cliche. It is very important as we move forward, because you don't know what's going to happen. Right now, in our current state of environment, we don't know what's going to happen. People are losing jobs. Unemployment is at an all-time high. Here in the state of Georgia, they're talking about the fact that we might even run out of funds, and the state of Georgia is going to have to borrow money in order to meet the needs of the state. So how do we now position ourselves within our own finances to ensure that our money blueprint is on target for us to be able to do those things that we're called to do, right? To build generational wealth and leave an inheritance for our children's children. I also want you to think about this. And this is from Bill Gates. Bill Gates says, if you're born poor, it's not your mistake. But if you die poor, it's your mistake. Now, I know that there is a lot of debate around this quote, and it's very controversial in nature. However, there is some truth in it, because most people that are in that state, and we're going to talk about that a little more, tend not to come out of that state because of decisions. Now, I'm not saying that's everyone's situation and that's what happens to every person. However, there are some of us who can make different choices and move forward when we're in alignment, right, with what we're called to do. So the objective today is to introduce, to inform, and to illustrate. All right, I see. All right, Pauline, do you have a question?
No.
Oh, okay, I saw a hand raised. Just wanted to make sure that I'm aware of every person.
That was me.
Okay. Okay. All right, no problem. Great. So to introduce to you these concepts, or to inform about the concepts that you made, the decisions that you may be making, and to illustrate how do you now move. And the reason I feel that I am positioned, if you will, to have this conversation, because we were at a time in our life, my husband and I, where at one point, neither of us had a job. And then when I finally got a job, and then he didn't have a job, and we were going back and forth, and we had to do all of these things and figure out how are we going to make this money thing work? Because it can be very taxing on a family. It can be very taxing on a marriage when you don't have that financial situation in order. So in sharing this, I wanted to share some of the insights, not only of what we have gone through, but also what the research shares. In addition to that, Warren Buffett clearly states that the best investment you can make is an investment in yourself. And you all decided to invest in yourself today, to be here, to be a part of this conversation so that you can now move to your next. So in looking at this, I want to position this to you in this way, because contrary to popular belief, being poor and being broke don't mean the same thing. Can we at least agree that being poor and being broke don't mean the same thing? All right. So when I look at this, both of them, right, they don't mean the same thing, because poor and broke both mean you don't have money. They're both a lack of money. We can all agree with that. But being poor is a mindset, because there are certain things you'll watch people, you'll watch their characteristics of that group of people who do that same thing. And we can say, okay, success leaves clues. We can also say being poor leaves clues, right? Because being poor is a mindset that a person adopts and continues to believe in and live in, while being broke is a temporary condition. See, you're not broke every day of your life. So let's say you get paid biweekly on Friday. You're not broke on Friday, right? Broke is temporary. Maybe you're broke after you go through and pay the bills, and then by Monday, you might be in that situation again. But being broke is temporary. So what I want to position to you today is to look at it differently. It's not a problem, but it's now an opportunity. What are some of the things that you can do differently within your finances now that are going to help you to propel to the next? Whether that means you need to look at some other opportunities that are available to you, start your own business, whatever the case may be. I don't know your desire. I don't know that you're living in your purpose, but I do say that this is an opportunity now to truly sit down and reflect. Most people won't. Most people won't sit down and have this conversation and say, then what is my money mindset? Where is my money blueprint taking me, right? And do I believe broke being a temporary condition? Because if it's temporary, anything that's temporary means that you can overcome it, means that it won't be like that. It means like the song we used to sing back in the day at church, trouble don't last always, right? So being broke is a temporary condition. So how do we now position ourselves? How do we move to the next?
You have to position yourself as one, right?
Say that again. You have to position yourself
as one, like position yourself and write down stuff that you want to do and fulfill that you want to do, that goal.
Absolutely. Write it down and make it plain. Absolutely. 100%. Because 9 times out of 10, the majority of people who write it down get it done. Research suggests that 80%, actually, it's 80% of people who actually write it down get it done. The problem is most people won't write it down. And to bring it home, I thought I would put this up of Kelly Rowland. She was recently in the media where she shared her story. And her quote that I chose to pull from that was, she said, I was rich broke. And I'll never forget having this moment. I called my friend, my best friend, and I said, I just don't know what to do, right? She said, what she went on to share her story is when she started making money in the early years with Destiny's Child, that she just started going out there spending money. And then the next thing she knew, she was in so much debt because she was just using her credit card however she chose to use it. And she didn't know exactly what she needed to do with her finances. And it broke her down. She said she was rich broke in that moment. But if you go on to read her story, she talks about how she had to come to grasp with her reality, to grips with her reality, and now change that. So I'm sharing that story to say, guys, it doesn't just happen to us. We hear the stories across the board, right? Across all communities, across all socioeconomic statuses. If you don't know how, or if you don't understand the value of ensuring that you are following your money, that you're making a budget, that you're doing these things, you're saving, you're investing, guys, your money slips away so quickly. It slips away so quickly if you're not mindful, right, of how that is now being utilized. So we're helping today to help start changing some of those mindsets, to help start putting you in a different way. So how do we start doing this? How do we start the process? The number one thing that I want you to write down and to do, because this is not just to sit here and get it. It's not just to sit here and listen to Lynn and Sandy share information with you today. This is a what am I going to do next conversation. Because I don't want you to come here, waste your time, spend all of this valuable time with us, get this great information, and then go out and do nothing. Most people will do nothing, but I'm calling you to greater, right? So in calling you to greater, this is what I'm asking you to do. You need to reflect, because self-awareness is the best medicine that we can take. If we're ailing in our financial situation, if we're ailing in our health, there are some medicines that we can take to help better that situation. Self-awareness is that medicine for your financial situation. So you have to understand exactly where you are, okay? So take a moment after we finish this broadcast today, after we finish this class today, and actually sit down and think about exactly where you are. No, this is not going to be an easy conversation to have with yourself or with your spouse. I highly recommend, if you have a spouse, bring them in. And if you have children, I highly implore you to bring the kids into the conversation, because we got to break some of these generational curses that are happening on our families when it comes to our finances. But there are 4 buckets that I need you to look at, okay? And any certified financial planner, any accountant, any estate planner that's worth their grain of salt is going to ask you to start with these 4 buckets, okay? And these are things that you can do on your own. I highly recommend that you do this first. So the first one is your income, right? What income do you have coming in? What are all the different revenue sources that come into your household, all right? The second bucket, your expenses, what's going out, okay? So what's coming in, what's going out. Look at everything. Also, don't forget about those little small expenses that we sometimes have. Maybe not so much today. It's not a just get in your car and stop by Starbucks on the way to the office situation much, right? Maybe for some, but not for a lot. But think about each one of those income that's coming in, all of those expenses, what's going out. But then you also need to look at your assets. And then looking at your assets, looking at the value of those assets and what you own, but also looking at your liabilities, okay? Now, I also do another workshop that actually goes through and talks about, you know, of your assets and your liabilities, what's good debt versus bad debt, and things of that nature. All right, so I have a question here. What is the budget? Is it restricting? Is it meant to restrict? Okay, Bridget. Now, that is not always the case. A budget is not meant to restrict, not in the way that I'm teaching it, okay? A budget is meant as, let's call it a tracker for you, okay? Because you're actually tracking what's happening with your money. Most people don't know what's happening with their money. So a budget in the beginning is a way for them to actually track and see what's happening. So what I typically recommend to those that I work with is just for 30 days, track every single thing that you do within that month, because for most of us, our expenses happen on a monthly basis, right? You pay your mortgage on a monthly basis, you pay your electricity on a monthly basis, so on and so forth. So doing this for a month should give you a good picture of what your expenses look like. So then once you have all of those expenses laid out, you have your income, then you can go back and create this budget for yourself. Do you have more expenses than you have income? Then yes, your budget is going to be restricting. However, if you don't have more expenses than you have income, then of course it will not be restricting. What we're doing with the budget initially is to track every dollar, track every cent, shall I say. Track every cent, because until we know where our money is going, we have no control over that. And let me tell you, it brings such a realization to your picture. It brings it more to the front of the mind, and you start thinking differently once you start tracking these things. And I want to put this out there, guys. Having a budget, I know it's given such a negative connotation. People think, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to live my life the way I want to live it. No, that's not the purpose of the budget. The purpose of the budget, if you look, even the millionaires and billionaires have budgets. Why? You better believe they track every single dollar. And if they're tracking every single dollar, then why are we, right? Most of us middle class thinking that, oh, I don't have to track my money. I'm doing good, right? I'm doing good. I don't need to track my money. I can make this happen. I can switch out these credit cards and make this happen. Or I can do this. I can move something around and make this happen. That's what that does. When you don't track, it creates stress, undue stress in many cases. Well, let me just say that. It was stressful for me when I didn't. It was extremely stressful. And I couldn't sleep well, right? But it wasn't until I was able to now track each one of those expenses, map it to my income, know what was coming in, what was going out. Now I can say, okay, this amount I do have available for saving. Or no, I don't have money that I can save this month, but these are some things that I can do differently, right? I don't have to stop now and get that slushy all the time or whatever the case may be, bad stuff that we don't need, right? That's the bad things in our finances as well as the bad things in our health, okay? So start thinking about it that way. Self-awareness is the best medicine. What are the steps that you're taking as an individual now that you can start to do things differently? And start today. It doesn't matter what you've done in the past. Yeah, there are some things in the past that we're going to have to clear up. That's okay. But you don't get to an 800 credit score by not making sure that you're following up on things, right? So what are some of the things that you would love to do? All right, I have another raised hand. So if you have a question, please go ahead and unmute yourself and share. Whoever raised their hand.
I do. What about the people with disabilities? Like people that's on disabilities, they have like income that they're trying to budget what they're trying to pay each month. So what is for them?
Sure. So, and I'm glad you asked that question because my sister did the same thing. She has passed now, but she was on disabilities while she was here on earth. And that was one of the things that I helped her with, was help to manage her funds on disability. And yeah, she didn't get that much money on disability, right? But she did have to be methodical. And she, truth be told, she was my slushy example. My sister would stop by at the little convenience store. She just had to get the big gulp or whatever it was from Spinks or somewhere, right? She had to have that big gulp or she had to have whatever that thing was. And when we actually sat down and said, look at A, B, and C, look at where you're actually utilizing these funds and help yourself recognize some things that you can do differently. So I do understand each person's situation is completely different. And when you're on disability, the government only wants you to have a certain amount of monies or else they're going to cut your disability, right? However, there's still things that you can do when you have your income, you track your expenses, you can look at where those funds are going and how you're now going to put those funds aside for, what you need later for your retirement or just saving to be able to do whatever that one thing is that you want to do. When you're doing it from a disabilities perspective, I highly recommend that you focus on one thing. And that's for everyone in general. But once you prioritize things, it gives you a completely different mindset. So think about for you in your situation, what's your one thing, right? What's the one thing that you would like to have, do, or that you want within your life, okay? And focus on that one thing, prioritize that, and set out a plan to be able to do that. Is that helpful? All righty. Okay, so in looking at this, I also wanted to share, because I've been talking about the state of the country from a general standpoint, but I also want to share overall for what's happening in this country. And this is from the United States Bureau of Labor Statistics. This was recently released, actually September 2019. They'll be updating it September 2020 this year. In this economic release report, you can actually go in there because they break it down by different tiers. They have the lower tiers of income, middle tiers, and the higher tiers of income. This just happens to be the middle tier of income that I pulled just to share for this broadcast, okay? So on average for the middle tier, and this is looking at a monthly, all right, you're gonna have to keep me on my time, because I can talk. So let me know when my time is up, please. In looking at this, as far as the income from the middle tier, it's about $6,000 a month. Expenses are roughly $5,000. Assets and liability, of course, are blank on this document, okay? So it just gives you an opportunity to go in and start looking at that for you, because if we are making our money, keeping our money, and growing our money so that we can do what we're called to do, build generational wealth and leave an inheritance for our children's children, then how do we now do that? No matter the size of your estate, no matter the size, right, of what you plan to pass on, there are assets and liabilities that you have to be aware of. So how do you get started? In getting started, the number one thing that I recommend is you got to examine where you are. What's your current net worth inside of those 4 buckets? Then once you examine where you are, the next thing that you must ask yourself is, where do I want to be? Where do I want to be in 1 year, in 5 years, and 10 years? And what I recommend is actually doing that backwards. Go 10, 5, then 1. Why? Because we always begin with the end in mind. Because 10 years can seem so far away, but before you know it, those 10 years are gone. Think back to the last, however old you are. If you're 20, or if you're 30 now, think back to 20. Or if you're 40 now, think back to 30. If you're 50, think back to 40. Didn't those past 10 years go quickly? So in examining your current net worth, start thinking about where do you want to be in the next 10 years, and you'll draft your plan backwards from there. So I do see that we have another chat. Let me double check. All right, I have 10 more minutes. Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a question?
So where do you want to be? Sure.
How do you figure out your net worth?
Okay.
Right. That's a good question.
So those 4 buckets that we were looking at, where you look at your income, your expenses, your assets, and your liabilities. What are all the assets that you own? Is that your house? Is that your car? Are there paintings? Is there jewelry? Your TVs? Everything, even the small things, generally coming up, what is the worth of those items? So much akin to, I don't know if you've done this before, but for your insurance policy, for your mortgage insurance and your homeowner's insurance policy, they ask you, or my insurance policy, they provided us with a booklet. And in that booklet, we were supposed to go in and record down, the names of everything that we have, the models and serial numbers of all those items in our homes, right? Because that helps our insurer to know, okay, that you do have a record of the things that were in your home in the event something unlikely happens, a fire or some other disaster, right? So that you'll have a record of those things. Much in the same way you do that for your net worth. What are your assets? Yes, you own your home, or you own your car, or you own these paintings, or grandmother, she gave me this jewelry, or whatever the case may be. What are all those things that you own? Your liabilities now have to be subtracted from that. Most of us, we're still paying on our home. So we've been in our home for 10 years, so we're still paying on our home. We have 5 more years, okay? So even though our home is an asset, it's also a liability because we're still paying on the house, okay? So what's that money that's left on the house to be paid? That amount needs to be subtracted out, okay? So I have the value of my assets minus my liabilities. That gives me my net worth, okay? And when you do that, because when the first time I did it, let's have a real moment. The first time I did it, y'all, my net worth was so negative that it was unbelievable. But that, even though it was a heart-wrenching moment, it was also a call to action moment for me, right? I got to get things right because I got to come up out of this negative because I owed so much in debt. So I just became, they call it tunnel vision. Don't want to sound cliche, but I got tunnel vision. I got my plan. My husband and I, we got the plan together. and we just started working on things, knocking things down, knocking things out. We had over $100,000 worth of student loans debt each. We had credit card debt galore. We had multiple cars, but we had to hone in on that and focus on what is it that we need to do to be able to get this done. And I didn't come from, I'm not a trust fund baby. I didn't come from a family that gave me money so I can just go on out into the world and get things started. That didn't happen, and it doesn't happen for most of us. So it took some time, and it took intentionality for us, and actually seeing that negative number on paper. We had a negative net worth. And truth be told, guys, most people do, and they don't recognize that initially. They don't recognize it. You don't recognize it until you actually sit down, put those numbers on paper. Then it becomes shocking. That became our motivation, and that is what helped us to get to the next level in identifying what that is. But I have some free resources in here that will help you to do all of these things that I'm talking about today, where you can just register, download. I have a financial confidence toolkit that I'm going to share with you as well. I know my time is running short for my segment. I'm going to allow you guys to hear from Sandy as well, but I wanted to speed up just a little bit to get back to, so that I can give you guys those resources. And just want to let you know, guys, as you're looking at this and as you're dealing with this, it can become tough. It can be hard in the beginning. You want to quit, you want to stop, you know, because you're like, no, it's not worth it. It's going to take me too long to get there. But then I also want you to think back over the last 10 years of your life. Think about all the money that came into your hands over the last 10 years. Think about what you did with it and what do you have to show for that. Then think, how will the next 10 years be different, or the next 20 years, or the next 30 years, whatever you decide. How will that look differently for me? What are some of the things that I can do? Not completely stop living. That's not what I'm saying. That is not what I'm saying by any stretch of the imagination. But how can we be more intentional in the way that we're moving forward? And so that you know, today, and this is another research study that I pulled, 48% of people are cutting back on discretionary spending because they have to. Some of them, not all of them, but because now people are afraid. So people are trying to figure out, most people are trying to figure out, okay, what are we going to do? Because the government is not helping us. They're actually contributing to the problem. So now how do I save myself? How do I now help save my family? And when I save my family, now how do I help save my community, right? Is the line of thinking that we're going through. So how do we now position ourselves to be able to do things differently? 44% of people are boosting their emergency funds. Why? Because they see the handwriting on the wall. We hear all of these different reports, and guys, stop watching the news, right? We hear all of these different reports around different things that are happening on a regular basis, and we're wondering what next, right? So how do I now prepare? How do I get myself ready? How do I get my family ready? How is my community prepared, right, for this next thing? And then 15% of people are investing more money in the stock market or other investments. Why? Because the greatest transition of wealth occurs during a down economy. And because the majority of us are not prepared during a down economy, guess what? The rich continue to get richer, the poor continue to get poorer. But once you make up your mind, change the mindset, and you start doing those things differently, being more methodical, being more intentional. And I know you keep hearing me say that word over and over and over, but I cannot stress the importance of us doing that within our communities. Until we grasp the value, right, of us investing for our future, as opposed to investing and getting in line and getting the next pair of Nikes, right, or the next pair of red bottoms, until we start investing into things differently, investing in ourselves, investing in our culture, we can't change the narrative. So where do you go from here, guys? You put a plan in place. And over the next 90 days, I want to help you to get to that place where you have your plan in place and it becomes methodical and simple for you to move to your next. Is it easy? Don't get me wrong. No, it's not easy. It's not easy. It is a process, but the process, it makes it simple to be able to get there. Simple and easy are not the same, but I digress. I want to get through this. Let me get to the resources for you guys so you can have this, okay? The resources that you have available to you. The reasons you don't save checklist written right here quickly on the screen. There's no savings goal. You have to have the goal. Someone said it earlier on this broadcast. You need to write it down, make that plain. Write those goals down and work towards those goals. You don't believe it will happen. Most of us, our mindset does not allow us to believe that we can have these things. Guys, we are the children of the Almighty. And everything that's here, He placed for us to enjoy if we align, right, with His will. Then why do we not believe it will happen? We don't have clear expectations. You haven't witnessed good money behavior. You have no physical space, right, for your money in that way. And bonus, you just don't understand and value money. So the reasons you don't save checklist, that's there if you want to take a screenshot, but you guys will also get the PowerPoint. I also mentioned my Financial Confidence podcast. If you want to receive updates from the podcast, you can text to this number, 312-487-3550. The keyword is podcast FC for Financial Confidence. So you can subscribe, receive show announcements, or you can simply go to this URL, bit.ly/FC podcast 2020. That's free. The Financial Confidence Toolkit, that takes you on, we talked about earlier, how do I determine my net worth? The Financial Confidence Toolkit is the way that you can help set that up. Access the Financial Confidence Toolkit at bit.ly/FC Toolkit. That is also free. Learn to invest. I have a 7-day prep course to investing. Guess what? That is also free. It's a course that's delivered to your inbox. It tells you certain things that you need to do, things you can set up so you can get started on that. And then that last resource, that one is not free because I do provide a bundle with some additional support classes and things of that nature. That's the Investing Blueprint bundle. Once you get to a point where you understand your net worth, you have your goals, you know, you've been saving, getting things set up, and now you're ready to tackle this investing thing, then the Investing Blueprint is for you. bit.ly Investing Blueprint there, okay? So I wanted to make sure that you all have the resources that you need. And as you see, the majority of these are free to help you feed your family financially during this time. There's no better time than now, guys. Why not you and why not today? All right? Okay. I also wanted to ask you, we're not going to do this poll, but what is one thing you will do differently as a result of this conversation? I want you to think about that.